In the state of Hawaii, under the auspices of the executive branch and the leadership of the governor, there is a department, the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, that was the inspiration of Prince Jona Kuhio Kalanianaole. In 1910, Prince Kuhio, a direct descendant of the Hawaiian monarchy and ali'i to his people, was the territorial delegate to the United States Congress. During this time, he saw the devastating effect of urbanization on Hawaiians. Living in crowded tenement quarters of the city, they were dying from disease and economic deprivation. He saw his people, with their deep love of the land, the Aina, separated from it and losing their connection to it. To save his people, Prince Kuhio presented to the United States Congress the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920. The act called for leasing 40 acres of land to each qualified recipient of Hawaiian ancestry, enough land to plant crops and raise livestock to support a family. Through his hard work, the act became law. Initially, the act was a demonstration project to see if his people would be successful, and the site of this test was the island of Molokai. The first Hawaiian homestead began on the southern coast, centered around the main city of Kaunakakai in an area known as Kalama'ula. It was called Kalanianaole Settlement. Second-class pastoral lots were the words used to label the land allotted to the first homestead on Molokai, an island so rocky that no one, not even a goat, can live on, was how one of the administrators of the program described the island itself. The lots were formerly a swamp with hard clay-like earth, littered with large rocks, and covered with thick kiawe forests. Purposely given land of poor quality, the homesteaders were challenged to succeed. Undaunted, 70 applicants from throughout the islands applied for 21 lots. By June 27, 1922, 8 were selected. The hunger to get back to the land and the desire for ownership was so great that Hawaiians living in the tenements of Honolulu and Hilo abandoned their trade as carpenters and mechanics. Others from rural areas who were hunters, fishermen, and farmers came as well. Once on the homestead, the whole family worked 10 to 12 hours a day, cutting and burning brush, hauling off rocks, so that the one tractor on Molokai could finally clear the land for crops. Almost a year later, the Molokai miracle happened. A bumper crop of watermelons, tomatoes, bananas, and alfalfa for livestock. By 1924, there were 37 families, 278 men, women, and children, all flourishing in Kalanianaole settlement. Unfortunately, water soon became a problem. After only a few successful harvests, the water table turned salty. The wells were sucked dry of fresh water, and ocean water seeped in. Other areas on Molokai were considered for homesteading. The largest was an elevated area on northwest central Molokai near the present-day airport called Ho'olehua. Though windswept, the land was arable and water more plentiful. Many of the original homesteaders moved their farms to this new location while keeping their homes in Kalama'ula, or they moved to Ho'olehua completely. In 1926, the 5-year demonstration project under the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920 ended. It was hailed a rousing success, prompting the United States Secretary of the Interior, Hubert Work, to recommend to Congress its continuation and its expansion to the other islands. This was the beginning of Hawaiian homelands. Prince Kuhio, who died in 1922, would have been proud to see his people back on the land, self-sufficient, overcoming this harsh environment, thriving, raising their children to value hard work and honesty, standing tall on the Aina. The story of the first homesteaders of Molokai is the story of pioneers. The following are 2 oral histories shared by the descendants of the original homesteaders who settled in Kalama'ula and Ho'olehua.
My name is Ivan Naliko Ka'ava English, and we're in our home on the homestead area in Molokai.
I'm known as Kuulei Perez, but my name on the Hawaiian Homes record is Lucy Kuulei Perez.
This is a new area than from where I was born. And I'm in this home. There's my husband and I, George, and in another home there's my son and his wife, George and Candace.
And my lot is 82 on Farrington Avenue. And I think when my parents came in 1925, we had the last lot on Farrington Avenue.
My father, his name is David Kaina Ka'ava, and my mother is Annie Kuulei Williams Ka'ava. They came to Molokai the year 1938, and they came from the island of Oahu at Palama area. And they came to Molokai because my mother wanted a homestead area. And she heard on the news or in the paper, she saw in the paper where they were giving out homestead area in Molokai. And so she applied for it, and she received her homestead, and that's how she came to Molokai.
William Kili'iku Ikael and Lucy Kamala Okalani Kauwe. They came from Hawaii, from a small place called Haina. It was in Honoka'a's area, but down towards the beach. And a couple of other folks from there came here too and had homestead the same time that we did. And I came here when I was 3 years old.
She lived lot 122 Mo'omomi Avenue, and that was the second to the last house on that avenue.
I guess they went over there and, had this Hawaiian Homestead lands open up, and they came over because others from that area came too. So that's why on Farrington Avenue, a lot of the same people that came from Hawaii stayed on Farrington Avenue.
I remember as a little girl, we had lots of water because we had a water tank in our yard that we used it for emergency water and also for our garden and our animals. And at times we had to clean the water tank, and my father would allow us to clean it and then empty the whole tank and then refill it again.
We had these tanks, and water would come in. You know how high the water would be. We'd climb up, and because they had I don't know, what do you call those rings that went around the tank, so you could step from one level to the other. That's what we did, to check the water. And if it was low, that meant we had to go clean the tank. But like every week or every other week, we would go inside and scrub up. But the water wasn't too bad for us because, see, they depended on rain for the crops.
But I remember as I got older, there was a water shortage on where we live, and we had to fill up 5-gallon can buckets or drums, and they were designated. This was for our bath, and this was for the animals, and this were for the garden, and every 3 days we would have water because we had 3 avenues, and so they went by avenues, and when it was our turn, the other 2 avenues didn't have water, and so the whole Momomi Avenue, it was their turn to use the water for the whole day and then refill it.
My earliest recollection was living in a one-room house. See, my father came ahead of us, but he built a one-room home. And after a while, they added on the side and on the four sides, and we had a kitchen, a bathroom, and bedroom. But most of the folks did that when they first came. And homesteading was working the land, right? And so we all helped, as children. I was the only one here with them, but then my brother, who lived in Honolulu, started to send his children here. So each one of his children came, and I was like the big sister for all of them. But it was fun.
I loved it. I thought there was no place as Holihua. It was a beautiful place to be in. We didn't have much neighbors, but what we had, it was enough. And everybody got along so well that sometimes you never knew if you were related or not, because everybody took care of each other. And when you went out, we had a big international truck, and my dad would pick up whoever didn't have a truck or a car on the avenue and just keep on going until there was no one standing outside to catch a ride. And we would go to the movie on the truck, go to the store on the truck. And so it was wonderful living here on Molokai.
My father planted corn, watermelon, pumpkin, squash, but in like maybe 1 acre of this, another acre of that, just to sustain the family, yeah. And when he got too much after that, then he started to sell to CQE Hub in Honolulu. And there was this boat called the Mo'i that came up and took whatever we had here to sell. And my dad had an express, so for us that was good, because there was a little bit business for him, yeah, and that helped us too. And then they had to plant pineapple. And we planted like in 5 acres or 10 acres. And the help that they got was from school kids from off island. Like I remember them having some boys from St. Louis come over. Then they stayed with us, built a long house in the back, and they stayed in the houses and they worked for us summertime.
They planted corn. They had watermelon, peanuts, potato, pigs, and that's what they lived. That's how they made their living.
See, they grew the pineapple, but they sold it to the companies. At that time when they first started, all of us did, all the homesteaders, most of the homesteaders I knew of, that we all grew up as kids, all of us worked in the fields too, to help. And the pineapples were loaded in little crates, like orange boxes, that kind. So there were maybe about 8 pineapples in one box.
My mother leased it. By that time, my father had decided to move back to Oahu. And my mother thought the best thing to do was to lease the land to the pineapple company. And we lived on that. It was small money, $79 at the beginning, but we made do. And then my father would send things up from Honolulu on the barge for us to survive. Mm-hmm.
And it seemed that when I went to Kamehameha in 35, that's when a lot of things changed, because then by the time I used to come back summertime, the companies, that's when they had been, taking over and giving the people $70 a month. So to them, there was plenty, yeah. But they could work the land also and get paid from the company.
When you plant, you eat. And because we didn't have that much money, and so we did lots of planting. and it was cheaper that way. And we didn't have to plant acres and acres of it. And so whatever you ate is what you plant. And you just went out in the garden and pick up what you needed for that evening, and you went in and you cooked it and you ate, and that was the dinner.
We had our own, we raised our own cattle for food, and we had, my dad had cows, and he had horses, and all these were used to plow. That's why she was talking about the plow down there. That's the kind of things we did. So as a child, I lived outdoors and did a lot of things outdoors. You know, when he would go plow the neighbor's yard, because we had a tractor and a plow. My dad had all these kind of things. He was one of those because he did that on the Big Island in Hawaii. So he himself was a person who could work with a lot of these machines. So we were lucky.
Whatever we raised, like we had pigs, and we would kill them, and we made salt pork and put it in a big crock with kalua the pig, and we would eat that. Or we would just, with the soup, we made soup. And whatever we had in the garden, cabbage mostly, we would mix that up with the pig, and we would have that.
The co-op was like for cooperation store. And not too long ago, after I met you, I came across this certificate. It had so many shares. That was for Hikiola Co-op. That's the name of that co-op. And today there is a place called Hikiola. But yeah, there are about 5 of them that belong to this corporation, and they own the store. And because he had the business for hauling freight from the pier, that was better for them, for him. You know, and the people that he worked with that owned part of this corporation store.
We're at Ho'olihua at our homestead area, and right now we're standing on the porch of my son and his wife's home. And in the back of me is my home with my husband, and we lived here for about 40 years that we lived on this homestead area.
Okay, we got a lot 82, which was the end of those homesteads on Farrington Avenue. This came later, so there were no homes here when we came. Just the back of Pu'ukapele and Farrington Avenue, and ours was the last lot.
When my mother wanted to move to Molokai, she had to find a place to live. And so she had Paul Elia build this home for the family. And the home wasn't this long. It was just the front part. There was only 2 bedrooms, the kitchen and the bathroom. And later on, as the family expanded, my mother added more things, more rooms to the home.
Hano hano valeno ore
call it Mama Polena's Hill. That's what it was always known as, because Mama Polena's house is on this side and there's a hill that goes down. So we always say Mama Polena's Hill.
Oh, that road, Mama Polena's road.
Yeah.
Means we're gonna come next to her house.
Yeah.
But the one that we went down, that's parenting, right? But we're gonna go to Mo'omomi Road.
And we'll hit Mo'omomi.
I really think this is the breadbasket. I really think as soon as these young kids get started and understand that this land is next to Maui, next to Oahu, which is growing, yeah? Where are they going to get their food from? Where are they going to plant? Right now they get hardly any land. So a lot of the kids see that today, and to me that is what is going to happen. You know, it can be the breadbasket of the islands. Everybody else is going to high rise, you know, and tourist industry. I think we have to go back to feeding people.
I see the future. If they don't work, they're not going to get ahead. They have to learn the value of work. If they're only thinking of the money, they're not going to get ahead, because without the work, you can't get the money. And if they don't, if they're on the homestead just to have a homestead and don't try to improve it, it's not a homestead. You have to learn to love the land. This land was given to us, and we need to take care of it. So you have to learn to love the land and take care of the land and use the land. Don't let the land go for waste. Use the land.
Actually, none of this is ours. You know, I go back to the Lord, because all of this belongs to Him. If you want to take it away, they get some floods or fire or whatever, and you lose everything. So to me, this young generation, little bit of them are coming back, but with more, I guess, more conviction. I think that this is the right thing to do. Go work on the land, go plant. You know, because only over here, I think we do the same thing that they did years ago.
My nephew's wife has the lease on that property. My nephew doesn't have enough Hawaiian to inherit, but she has, and her children have. And so she has the lease, Nona Ka'ava. And we're happy that they have it. My nephew was brought up in that house. And although the house is getting older, but we love the place. And we want the family to enjoy the house. And we know that we can go there anytime we want, down there. It's been a wonderful time being raised in that home and in that area. There's lots of wonderful memories that we collected while being there.
But that kind of living to me is loving people. You know, living off what you have, and with what you have, you enjoy more. That's my life story. But that all came from my parents. That kind of thinking, that kind of way of living, share what you have, you know. Everything with me, I love to work with people. So that's why I said we play music. Play music at the hotel. And over there, you know that we met so many people. And we're kupunas. And that is part of, should be our culture, you know. Greeting people, having them feel like they're part of you. They're not only visitors to this island, but they become a part of what we are.
The neighborhood has been wonderful. Just like one big family. That you couldn't even marry each other because you were raised as family.
You know, so for me, I've lived through a time where was hard, but I didn't know that because we appreciated what we had. So as I grew older and know what is hard times, then it's a gee, didn't know we were that poor.